Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and back yet again, Bobby Burrows here to talk to us more about updates for Einstein Discovery for the Winter 22 release. Dave, thanks for coming out yet again. Always appreciated, and I'm sure you got some cool things in store. So take it away.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for inviting me once again. All right, so let's dive into the Winter 22 release, which is live on our pre-release environments. All right, so I am starting off yet again back in Lightning because I want to show you my favorite feature of the release, which is Einstein Discovery native action in Flow. But I'm not going to show you Flow because, well, I'm going to eventually show you Flow, but I'm going to start with a use case. So, oops, I don't want quotes. I'm going to start with a use case in opportunity. So, if you're in a sales process, usually one of the most important parts of the sales process is actually generating the quote to the customer, the pricing. That's very important, right? So what if you could use the power of Einstein Discovery models to help you understand sort of how to quote the customer? So if we take a bunch of historical quotes and we look at, was this quote, offered to the customer, was it accepted? We look at things like the price, the discount, which is probably the most important thing, the product, and maybe some other attributes of the customer. So once you have that model, you can actually use it for your quoting process. Now, when we're talking process, the first thing that comes to my mind is Flow, because we've just made it so easy to create these awesome sales processes without writing any code, or any process, any custom automation without writing any code. I love Flow, especially where it's at now. So that's why I was excited to build this feature. So let's look at this opportunity. I'm going to generate a quote. So we have the product information. In this case, this opportunity has one product. And I'm going to choose the quoting term. So we're going to say 12-month term. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the discount. But before I set the discount, they actually ran this hypothetical quote. So this quote that I haven't even created, we ran it through an Einstein Discovery model. And what we saw by running through Flow is what is the optimal discount for the customer to be able to accept this quote. So based on the product and the quantity and all these things, we're saying that a discount between 45 and 46% will yield a likelihood to accept of 53.32%. So this is the highest likelihood. And then we ran some other scenarios in here. Again, this is all done declaratively in Flow, where I can say, hey, discount of 0% yields a 38.28% likelihood. Sort of makes sense. 20% is a 48.65% likelihood, and a 40% discount is a 48.95. A little bit, maybe too accurate here. Maybe we should just round up, but it kind of shows the likelihood to accept. So I can use this information to choose what discount I could use. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of business rules that a customer is going to want to put on top of this, and that's where Flow is the perfect tool for it, because you can apply those business rules. And now I've been able to, before I even generate my quote, I have an idea on the likelihood this quote is going to be to get accepted. So all I have to do is now create it. The quote's going to get generated, and Flow is going to update and tell me that, well, here, look at that. So it's creating my quote, and then next time I refresh, right, I'm not going to be asked to generate a quote because there's already an active one. So I've taken the power of Einstein Discovery and I've put it within my automation without having to write any code, which is pretty cool. So let's look at the flow to see what we did. So we started off where I wanted to, we run this one on opportunities, right? So we're going to get any existing quotes that might exist. If there's already one that's synced, we're going to display the sync quote. We saw that already. If there's not, well, we want to get the list of the products. And we want to, the first thing was the terms of the quote. So I have this screen, get some selections from that screen. And this is where we have this, this new action. So let me show you how that's set up. So if I click a new action, we have this new section called Einstein Discovery. In the action dropdown, this is going to be any deployed model that you have. So this is anything that comes up in Model Manager in Analytics Studio. So this is where I had created my predicted quote acceptance. I can give it a label, you know, Flow. We love to give everything labels. Predicted quote acceptance. I'm actually not going to save it because I already have one, but let me just show you what we have. And then I can tell Flow what I want to store. So I can store the prediction. This is pretty simple, straightforward. But what I did, in fact, I used the top improvement. So this is where discovery, actually, the discount I set as an action variable. And one of the kind of cool things that you can do with action variables is if you don't map that action variable, we actually look at it as null. So if we don't know what that action variable is, we're gonna look at it as null, and then we're gonna basically say, okay, well, let's find the best one. What's the best way to set this to get the highest outcome? So if I don't map this discount field, that's where the improvement's going to come back with the best. What should I change it to? And that's what we saw in the UI. So in fact, let me show you what this looks like when everything's mapped. I do, in this case, I'm looking at predictors, but I'm not using them anywhere. But I get the customer type from the opportunity. I get the product name from, I did a lookup on product. So you can see how here's the inputs to the model, and I can get these inputs from various places in Salesforce. And remember, I didn't actually create the quote. So it's getting all these things before it creates the quote. And then I left discount blank so that I can get the improvement. So then once I do this action, we have this new object. And I love Flow. I think it was a couple releases ago, instead of having to create a variable for everything, it just kind of automatically creates these variables, which is awesome. So I can loop through all of the get Einstein discovery improvements. So now I'm going to look through all the improvements that come by, and then I can loop through the column. So if there's going to be another kind of set of objects underneath these collections, and I can loop through the columns, and then I can check to see, is one of those columns discount? If it is, let's show that screen, and then get all the information and then create the quote. So it's a pretty, this is just one example. There's a lot of other examples. In fact, I think anytime in Salesforce where you're creating a record within the flow of, you're in Salesforce and you're creating new records, rather than wait for the record to get created, wait for it to be scored later, you can get everything immediately. So this is where I think there's a lot of use case, especially with cases, if agents creating a case or a customer is creating a case, we can get the predicted outcome a lot sooner in the flow. So that is generally available. This is, again, my favorite feature, but there's a ton of other features also available. So I'm going to go into Tableau CRM Studio to show you some of those features. So the first thing, go ahead.
You go there. You hop back to the flow screen.
Of course.
I can see use cases for this around upsell, cross-sell. Which product should I add next? What opportunity should I create for this account? And this has been a real head scratcher for me that I was trying to tackle in life. Now I think the answer might be, could we give it a week or two for the new features to pop up in our sandbox, and then we can begin developing? So this solves for a lot of gaps that there were just certain types of analysis we couldn't do previously, because you couldn't really do an analysis on a record that didn't exist.
Absolutely. Are you familiar with the next best action strategy builder? Have you used that ever?
A little bit.
So basically what you were talking about are sort of next best action type scenarios. And one of the things, I think this is, safe harbor, I think it's a pilot now, but I'm going to throw the forward-looking statement out there. That's all moving to Flow as well. So you'll actually be able to create within Flow a next best action template. So it's the output of it is, a bunch of actions to take. So one of the use cases I have for this is actually Einstein Discovery improvement recommendations can actually be fed directly into next best action dynamically. So that's through this integration, you can do that all without any code. Today, you can do all that with code, but I hate having to tell people, oh, here's a managed package you can install with some Apex code. Because the second they do that, then I'm on the hook for any kind of changes that need to be made, or everyone's got some feedback, and want to change it, and I can't maintain that. So that's why I want to put it in as declarative in the product if possible.
Yeah, this is really, really cool.
So this is an example of, taking a model that's already been created and, making it more extensible throughout the application. But of course, we're not just about model kind of consumption, it's all about model building as well. So we're going to show you a bunch of enhancements to really, it's really empowering the non-data scientist to be able to build sort of smarter analyses and even handle some more use cases. So the first one I'm going to show you is this. I've got a bunch of case data, and this is a feature that we just went GA with pilot the last release. Actually, before I get into that, you might notice a little bit of a difference here. The first thing you do is choose a column. Before it was, I want to minimize, maximize, and then you choose the column you want to minimize, maximize. We wanted to make this a little simpler, especially because one of the features I'm going to show you in a little bit, we want to be able to support kind of more outcomes. So I'm going to start with choosing a field, which I think in the last release, we actually switched them. It used to be minimize, maximize first, and now it's choose the column and then minimize, maximize. So it'll make a little bit more sense in this release why we did that. But I'm going to choose business hours age. So this is cases. And of course, I want to minimize that. We had a weird user experience a long time ago, where not a lot, actually last release, where if your number field, if you had a number field with 1 and 0, you should use it as a binary field. So with this new UI, we now actually treat it correctly. So if you choose one of those number fields that is binary, we'll know that it's a binary field and not a number field, and we won't offer you that. Basically, we won't let you do a regression when you're supposed to be doing binary classification. But in this case, I do want to do a regression, and I want to analyze this business hours age. So I want to look at what's driving my case time to close. I'm going to go into insights and predictions, and I'm going to go into manual setup so I can show you a couple new features. So first off, we've moved some of the things around. We had some buttons up here and a drop down to choose the algorithm. So that's all been moved to this new general settings. We have a link back to the data set. How many times have you gone to a story and you're like, what data set was this? Well, guess what? We linked to it so you can open it. So this is trying to make things easier.
Yeah, that might have come up once or twice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've asked me. I've definitely gotten this from many people, even internal SEs that are like, I don't know what data set this is. So we're like, we do, it's in the metadata, so why don't we just put a link to it? So we did. And there's a new option for validation. So what does this mean? In the previous version of Discovery in summer 21 release, trying to remember the release numbers, we did one type of validation, and it was called cross-validation, which is a technique where we're going to look at we're going to train the model, and then we're going to split it up 4 different ways. And we're going to basically look at the metrics and then run some tests on those metrics to make sure that kind of this cross-validation was kind of similar across these 4 folds. So it's a data science technique. You don't have to know about it as a user because we just do it for you. We sort of hide it from you, not hide it, but we perform it on your behalf. But there's customers out there that are like, but I already have this training set and a validation set. There's customers that have done data science before, and they're used to running a model on some validation set. So we now have the option, we have a couple options. You can now choose an external validation set. So in this case, I have this case data for validation. If you notice, only one option showed up. We actually do some analysis on all your data sets, and we look for a data set that matches your schema exactly. So if you want to use this feature, you got to make sure the validation set matches exactly. But I can choose this, and by doing this, we're going to create the model, and then all of the model metrics we're going to run on this validation set. So we're going to see how well it performed on this validation set. So this is kind of it's more advanced feature, but it is pretty useful, especially as you start to build more models. A couple things I want to show you. So that's one option. Another option is maybe you don't have this validation set and you want to actually set this training validation ratio. So you can say train on, let's say, 60% of the data and then validate on 40%. So you can set this this range. Here's 60-40. We still need enough training and validation set. So the max you can set is 85 training, 15 validation, and then the minimum is 60-40. So this is how you can tell the model training kind of how to do this. So we pick 60% of this data, or in this case, 75% of the data, and then we hold out a 25% of it, a specific 25%, and then we'll validate on that. So this is the validation options that's new. But there's one piece of one thing here that, especially when you're looking at case data, that I think every customer is going to want to do. And I have this description field. So previously in discovery description, which is basically, consider this a unique field, because pretty much all cases are going to have different description or subjects or something like this. Any kind of long text. You've never been able to analyze long text fields. But there's certain transformations that you could do on them. So the first, when you think of cases, sentiment analysis could come to mind. So now we have the sentiment analysis model you can run. So it's the same one you see in recipes, so the same one that's available today. But my only option to use this description field is to transform it. So this is good. We're going to be doing a lot more to unstructured text. So this is just the first one that's GA. So we have some stuff coming up in the future that's going to be really cool. So now, when I create this model, it's not going to look at description. It's going to run descriptions through sentiment, and then it's going to show me what that looks like. I'm not going to create the story. It's going to take some time. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's already done. So I've got what's driving time to close case. And I've got this description. And so I might have had a hypothesis that when it's a negative sentiment description, that might take longer. It does, but as you can see, there's the discovery has basically not found any statistical significance to any of these values. So it has very little explainability to driving the time it takes to close. As you can see, a positive, it takes on average 90 days, and negative is 93 days. So it's not really that big of a difference, which is why it's not statistically significant. But I now have this transform field. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So just little disambiguation. Is it safe to say that this is using the sentiment analysis from the data prep platform and not from Einstein platform services?
That's correct. It's the exact same model as recipes.
Got it. Because the question that would immediately come next is, well, if it's platform services, that means you have to build a training data set. If it's data prep, it's just it's a little bit black box, but it's also the easy button.
That's correct. Yep. Now, in the future, we want to support both, because we know that this sort of black box easy button doesn't really solve all the use cases. One customer might already have a really good training set for a very specific sentiment model. So sometime in the future, super forward looking, we do want to support that, but at least for now, we do have a way to structure your unstructured data a little bit with detect sentiment. Now, the really cool part about this is once I deploy the model and I want to get predictions back in Salesforce, maybe I have of course I have a description field in cases. I don't want to have to transform that. I don't want to have to have that run through recipes to transform that. I just want to get my prediction. So the good thing is, if you apply this transformation in the story, you deploy the model, you map to this description field, we'll take care of the heavy lifting. And so upon prediction time, we're going to look at the description, we're going to run it through the same model, get the sentiment, and then deliver your prediction based on the sentiment. So all of that is already taken care of so that you don't have to worry about it. Awesome. So the next thing you might be noticing is this hopefully you're noticing it, right? We have this, this little 8 is showing up, and the button that used to say recommended updates to the story has been relabeled as review alerts. Before I click into that, I'm going to click into model, because this is where it sort of comes full circle. So we had this assess deployment readiness in the past, and it was kind of confusing because there's a lot of improvement recommendations that you could make to a story, but none of them are really required. But what we wanted to do is take some of those, add a few more, and really just tell you, just kind of give you an idea if we think that there's issues in the model. We don't want to necessarily tell you that you have a really good model, but we do want to point out where there are some issues. So we've repurposed this card for model quality checks. So in fact, we're also looking at R squared and AUC, and we have some other ones that we're planning in the future. And if I click view all alerts, it's a little bit different of a user experience. So first off, we have this, I think we used to have cross-validation passed in that other list. We're like, it's a data alert. If cross-validation fails, it's a problem. But we have this new option to ignore alerts. Because like I said, not all of them really you have to take an action on. We're going to tell you what this is, and you can decide whether or not you want to ignore it or keep it. So in this case, I can choose ignore the cross-validation alert. We change the text so you can hopefully understand it. I think strong predictors we relabeled as high correlation, and we can tell you, a little bit more like, hey, this is data leakage potentially, too much explainability. But 36% is right around our threshold where we're going to flag it. And I guess I could argue that, of course, if you're following up a lot on cases, that is, of course, going to, we're telling the system that it's going to be it's going to take a long time to close, because if you're, one follow-up and then you close it is obviously going to happen faster. So arguably, you can say, yes, this is data leakage, but maybe you do want to know this information, especially if so many times that you follow up on a case. I don't know, maybe you're following up a lot within the same day, so it's going to close faster. But I at least as a business person could decide, and if I ignore it, then it goes away. And so if I just ignore, I'm just going to ignore some, and I'm going to leave these to show you what happens. So I'm going to click apply. And then, of course, everything is about, we want to have full transparency on these models. So next time I click review, it's going to show me that I've resolved these. And if any of them are sort of ignored without taking action and they're a problem, we're going to flag them so that that it's also important to know who did it. So if there's multiple people working on this, we have that. So I'm really excited about this feature because, one, you can ignore alerts so they finally just go away, and then two, we're offering you some better information. Also, multi-collinearity. This used to be duplicate fields. It explains it a little bit better, and then we've cleaned it up so you get less alerts on this, especially if there's like 4 fields that are all duplicates of each other. You ended up with so many different alerts. Now you basically just get 1 alert per field. So if that field is duplicate with any other field, you're going to get the alert. And then instead of choosing, do I keep this field or that field, you only get to either ignore the alert or exclude the one field. So in this case, functional area is a field. It's duplicate with general application. And my option is either ignore the alert or exclude functional area. Maybe I want both, so I can just ignore it. So that is the new and improved model quality alerts. I'm really excited about. The next thing I wanted to show you is some enhancements we've made to the deploy flow. First off, there used to be 2 radio buttons. You could either add them, it was deploy as a new prediction, or add or replace a prediction or a model in a prediction definition. And we're like, they're 2 different actions. I'm either going to add or I'm going to update. Why should I have sort of 2 actions within 1 radio button? So we made 3. We have some intelligence to see hey, this story was already deployed. We know it was already deployed. So you probably, in this case, this is a new version. So you probably wanted to just update this model. So in this case, I can choose, if I have multiple models, I can choose the model to update. And then, of course, we're showing you this model quality check here. So if there's any issues, you're not deploying a model that's bad. You hopefully will have actioned them or ignored, that's fine. In this case, cross-validation failed. So really, I shouldn't ignore it. I should really try to fix it. But watch this. So because of updating existing model, I don't know if you hate the deploy flow as much as I do, because I always have to demo it and click through it. Well, we're like, why should you have to fill in the same things again? Let's just take you right to the end and then show you what you've done. So if you wanted to make any updates, you can go back and do that. And then as you see, I clicked deploy, right? And it didn't take me back to the story. It left my story tab. It brought me directly into Model Manager, which we gave you a button in the last release so you could choose to do that. But really, your next action should be in Model Manager, right? We're introducing, especially if you're a brand new customer, you've never used this before you deploy, you don't know Model Manager. You don't know what to do there. So we're taking you directly there. We're showing you what you've done in settings. So we've cleaned this up a bit. And we're going to be doing some more in the next release here. One other thing I wanted to show you, we've updated the component where you're doing field mapping. That's what I wanted to show you. So let me just quickly, because it's a little bit more usable. I want to get your thoughts on if you even knew this existed or not. So in this case, when I choose a object field, notice it starts you with where this is actually how flow works. In fact, I think we use the same one. So if I wanted to choose a parent object, I click on that, it then automatically loads and I can keep going up the parent, right? And then you can see kind of where you're at, and then you can choose a field.
Yeah. And
yes, this existed before, but it was very, very hard to use.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's the same concept as flow and formula builder, but it's it's your own UI, but the same philosophy of this is what you should expect. I really do like to see that. I'm hoping we'll get that with embedded filters on Lightning pages too.
Yes, I didn't even think about that. I can take that back to that team. I think that's good feedback. I didn't even think about how bad that.
No. I think I might have that backwards. I know that like the type ahead functionality on the embedded filters leaves a little room to improve.
All right, so I do want to highlight another kind of key feature that we did, but there's something going on. There was a thing that was turned off, so I can't show you what the flow looks like. But if you can see here, I have this bring your own model Python lead model. So what is this bring your own model Python lead? I don't know, have you heard us talk about bring your own model before?
Yes, my understanding is that plans will initially be to support models that were built with TensorFlow, and that you're going to expand from there.
That's correct. So it is officially GA in the winter release.
I think it's beta going. My understanding was that it was beta in summer 22 or 21.
It was beta in, well, pilot. I don't think beta, I think means you can turn it, like any customer could turn it on. It's still pilot, still required us to flip a switch. It is officially GA in the winter release. So it means that it's in sort of limited support, and not limited support, it's the wrong word. It doesn't work in the same way that discovery models work today. So it's going out because of performance. It'll work with the Lightning component. It'll work with the public APIs that we have, as well as if you do it in Apex, you can do it with asynchronous Apex. You can't invoke it within a trigger, but you can invoke it within anything asynchronous. And then of course, within the Tableau, Einstein Discovery and Tableau integration, it will work there. So it's TensorFlow version 2.4.1. Yes, I know it's very specific. We had to start somewhere. We're gonna definitely support many more versions in the future, but we're starting with one. And then there's a bunch of different libraries that you can use for kind of the transformations and the various things that customers are used to when they do custom Python models. So it's a first step, first of many, but I'm really excited about this finally getting to GA. So those are the GA features, and I have a bunch of pilots to talk to you about as well. And let's get into another use case on cases, I think, where when cases close, they close for many different reasons. So in fact, if you ever wanted to kind of analyze what is driving a certain kind of case closure status, you can now do that. This is what's traditionally a multi-class classification problem. We're just going to hand wave across that. Let's go into all right. So a multi-class classification problem you can now do. So this, again, this is why we reorganized our UI for creating a story, because now you can choose fields that might have multiple outcomes, not outcomes, multiple values. So instead of just binary, I have this case status that has, I think this one has like 7 different values. We support up to 10. And again, this is pilot in the winter release. And I can do some things here. Notice things are a little bit different. The algorithm, we only support tree-based models. You can only do multi-class classification type models, or you can't do them with like our general linear model. You have to use a tree-based algorithm. So that's why it defaults to GBM, because this will be the fastest. I can still do things like apply my sentiment analysis on description, and I can see what's driving these 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 different statuses. So for instance, closed resolved versus customer closed the case, or no response for customer. I might want to understand, is this case trending towards a no response from the customer? If I know that it is, perhaps I can get it closed sooner, so that the case agent can actually go work on something else. So that's just one example of where this can be used. And rather than wait the, I don't know, a few minutes that it's gonna take to create, let me show you what this story looks like. So it's gonna look a little bit the same, a little bit different. It's no longer correlation, we have this association. So it's a different metric. So before it was basically R squared. This is the well, you can see the I won't read the tooltip here, but now we can look at what's kind of most highly associated with how the case is being closed, and of course is escalated is at the top. What we're going to see by default is all of the outcome statuses down here, and I can maybe drill into a few. So maybe I only want to look at, whether the customer closed it, or no response from customer, or the whether it was where it's closed. I can't even find it. Closed resolve. So these are kind of my top 3 cases. So I can see if escalated was no, I have a higher customer closed the case. But if it was escalated, then it actually is a higher number of closed resolved. I could look at the time. So this is actually, I like this one because this tells a story, and I can maybe filter on whether the customer closed, no response, or whether it was resolved. And if I look at it over time, right? So these are looking at 0 to 4 days, 4 days to 12 days, and so on, all the way up till up to 1,000 days, right? And so green is closed resolved. So higher proportion of closed resolved when the case isn't open as long, and then it crosses this threshold, and all of a sudden we see a higher number of no response from customer, no response from customer, and so on. And then we can see customers close the case within 33 to 49 days, but after a certain point, the customer stops, less likely to close the case. It's gonna basically, they're just not gonna respond. So this is real data kind of masked so that I can demo it. But it's a really kind of cool way to analyze your data when there are multiple different classifications that the outcome field might have. In the next release, you'll be able to deploy this model and score basically like a new case or whatever use case you have. I can also get a row of data. So if I want to kind of start predicting a row of data here, right? And then I even have, I think, description. Where did I not bring a description here? Oh, I didn't open the one where description was had sentiment. But I can, let's say this follow-up, if I change this number of follow-ups, right? It's basically saying, yeah, this too many follow-ups is, of course, it's going to be resolved. But if there's not enough follow-ups, customer is likely to close the case.
And they say a good model should tell you things that you know. And this
Yep.
seems like a very plausible, as somebody who's had to log a number of support tickets with Salesforce over the years, this seems pretty accurate.
Right. And again, like I said, this is, I have these functional areas because, they look like Salesforce things because I needed some data. So, this is not Salesforce data, of course, because I would not be showing you that, but it is at least trying to tell the same story. So I do want to call that out. But we do show you the order, the rank order, which is important because if we're predicting that this is going to be customer closed, but really it's very close to close resolved, it's important for the user to know. So when we show you this prediction back on the page, we're going to have this information in there as well.
Yeah, like that's our close second. But yeah, I would definitely agree that there's a visible story on that previous page of the ebb and flow of the outputs over time. And it's not hard to spot. You don't have to be super technical. You don't have to be a data scientist. The chart just shows you what's going on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, a couple more kind of smaller features that are in pilot, but really empowering that non-data scientist. I don't know if you've actually hit this problem before, but I've seen a lot of customers where they just want to, oh, wow, look at that. I gotta log that. All right. Let's get back in. All right, so the problem is you have a binary field and we let you analyze that. So I have this is escalated field and I did a calculation on it so I can show this demo. And I want to basically minimize the escalated cases. So what I'm trying to do here is predict whether or not a case is going to get escalated based on certain things. So when I go into my manual mode, this is a pilot and it's going to point out, hey, you know what? This is an imbalanced distribution, which means that we don't actually have enough data to build a good model here. So in fact, 96.2% of the values are false. So basically it's less than 5% of the data is true. So we're not actually going to be able to build a good model. In fact, we tell people you should have at least 10% of one versus the other. So if you have like a 91% and 91% false, 99% true, you probably don't want. It's probably not going to be the best model.
So what you're saying is Dr. Strange would not be able to use this to find an outcome where the Avengers win.
Correct, exactly. So we have this new feature where we can apply class weights. So what we're doing here is you don't have to really worry about it other than knowing, hey, I have this imbalanced distribution. Well, yeah, I should apply class weights because we're telling you to. So we're actually going to be able to build a better model to better predict the lesser class. Otherwise, what you end up with, so the today problem, I guess maybe I should have started there. The today problem is, is you end up with what you think is a really good model. 0.84 AUC isn't bad. We wouldn't show you a warning there, but look at this. When we're choosing the threshold, the max accuracy threshold is 1. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're only going to be able to predict the negative because that's pretty much all the cases we had. In fact, if we change the threshold, I slide it down, we're still mostly only predicting the negative case. And in fact, we're not even predicting it that well anymore as we move the threshold down. So this is a sign of a really bad model. And so with the weights, we're actually able to do this a little bit differently. And your confusion should look a little bit better, and we'll be able to find some positives. Again, this is a pilot feature. A couple more pilots I want to call out. Nothing really to show you. We have a smart sampling feature where if you have a really big data set and you don't want to spend so much time waiting for the story to complete or us to build the model. Let's say you have 20 million rows of data. Smart sampling will actually take a representative set of data, so a smaller set from your bigger set, and we're going to be able to build the model on that smaller set. So we're actually going to be able to do it faster. And this is going to allow us to hit the bigger than 20 million row data set problem. Right now, if you have more than 20 million rows of data, you've got to filter it out manually. That's not always the easiest thing to do. So smart sampling will just take care of it for you. And then the last thing, I'm unfortunately not able to show you this, but are you familiar with our live data sets in Snowflake? I don't know if you're using this feature yet, but live data sets, in fact, I have some, but I can't show you the feature because there's an issue. So I have this live data set of orders from Snowflake. I think the issue is Snowflake connector. It was a free version, trial version went out, so I can't show you. You now have the ability, this is a pilot, to create a story on a live data. So that means you don't have to even create a data set anymore. You don't have to run it through a recipe. You just point us at your live data, and we'll be able to build a model off that. So it's just an easier way to do it. In fact, if you can build a dashboard of it, why can't you build a story? So this is, again, it's a pilot. Expect to see a lot more use cases around this, especially as Salesforce is moving towards, leave data where it's at. So we're really excited about being able to point our kind of modeling engine on data that doesn't even live in TCRM. And with that is all of our winter release. So it's been, again, a really exciting release. Lots of great use cases I want to show off at our, Dreamforce that's going to be worldwide and virtual as well. I'm doing some virtual videos. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, that was really awesome. I loved everything I saw. I do have two follow-up questions. First, I would like to point out that those quotes were quotes in air quotes only, because those are not, what is it? I had to Google it, 0Q0. But yeah, I mean, quotes are kind of a jerk to work with. So yes, I would have done the same thing. Yeah, so my two questions are, one, for a long time there, and I mean, one of the reasons I didn't like recipes in the first place was because you couldn't really deploy them very easily. And there are still aspects of models that, well, not the model, but the story itself that can't be deployed. Is that on the roadmap at all?
So I really wanted to get it done in the winter release. And unfortunately, there was just too much. So we did start it in the winter release. So we're halfway there. In the spring release, again, this forward-looking statement applies here. In the spring release, I hope to finally complete all of our packaging debt, I'm going to call it, from the product. So today, you can deploy models via change set. You can build in a sandbox, you can get the models, which is important because if you're connecting it to a recipe or you're connecting it to what I showed you in Flow, a lot of those things are built in a sandbox as well. So you want to make sure all that kind of spiders and you get all the metadata. So that's already covered. But what you're missing is the story. Hopefully, well, I guess it's already on the plan for our spring release. You'll finally be able to get the story. And the way it's going to work is you're going to get basically the story settings, if you will. So the same way that it works with, let's say, a data set or data flow, you're going to get this metadata that explains what it needs to do. You're still going to need to run it. So you're going to have this new state of story with all the settings that you did in the sandbox. It's going to point to whatever data set you had in the sandbox. So all that's in a spider. You still have to run the story because the data could be different. So we're not going to support the charts or anything, but it's, again, that's the same way it works for like a dashboard or data flow. So you're going to get a consistent experience. I'm finally excited to get that off of my tech debt list.
Yeah, and that'll kind of close the loop on that one.
Yep.
The other question I had, the revenue ops template first showcased a unsung addition, which is the discovery step on dashboards. And I've been able to kind of play around with it a little bit, but it's not really documented and it's pure JSON. So I was wondering what we might have in the future for that.
Yeah, so one of the other things I didn't mention, there were some updates to our Insights API is what we're calling it. So it officially GA'd in our last release, and we're sort of looking for, there's a lot of, I think, use cases for it. One of which, revenue ops, was they were our first customer. And we added some capabilities. So, and I think now you can get the why it happened, like the waterfall chart metrics, so you can understand kind of what's driving a certain outcome, which is pretty cool. So that's now in the API. But what we saw with the revenue ops is we're very limited about what we can actually do within a standard widget. Now, I don't know if you've used the components, not the components, the LWC components in dashboards. I think it was Pilot.
Those I believe those are available this release, if or at least in they're listed as a beta feature in GSO current.
Yep. So with LWC, you can actually go further with our Insights API. So actually a lot more you can do than with what the revenue ops app did. So we're looking at a couple ways. So one, we do want to give you a UI to be able to build what you see in revenue ops, because I think there's some value there. You're going to end up with a bunch of text fields. There's not a really good way to visualize what's the outcome or the output of the Insights API, maybe a bar chart, but there's not too many good visualizations. But within an LWC, you can do a lot more. So I've been building up some kind of POCs that way as well. And because it's an API and with LWC, it's all code. So right now we're code heavy, but we're coming up maybe some standard LWCs that you can drag and drop and then connect to a story. So we're looking at that angle as well. But if we are trying to get a native kind of UI in dashboards to build that step or query, I guess. It's just not yet committed to the next release. We're pushing hard. We're working with another team. There's a lot of conflicting priorities, if you will. So not sure we're gonna be able to get that, but through LWC, there's a lot you can do with that, even more so.
Well, you always got to pick your battles, and in time we do get a nice robust thing. So I believe that's all we have for tonight. Bobby, thanks for coming out as always. To those of you at home, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for watching.